in the shadowed halls of the ancient kingdom of Eldrith, where the stone walls whispered secrets of blood and betrayal to those who dared listen. A storm raged outside the towering battlements, its thunder echoing like the wrath of forgotten gods. Princess Alara, with her raven hair cascading like midnight rivers and eyes the color of storm-tossed seas, had always known the fragility of her world, but on this fateful night, as the wind howled through the cracks in the fortress, she would learn the true depths of human depravity, a lesson etched not in ink but in the scars of her soul. Alara's mother, Queen Isolde, had once been the epitome of grace and power, her beauty a weapon that had ensnared the heart of King Thorn, ruler of Eldrith. Their union had been forged in the fires of alliance, binding two warring houses and birthing Alara as the fragile heir to a throne built on uneasy peace. But peace, in those brutal times, was as fleeting as a candle's flame in a gale. King Thorn had fallen in battle against the barbaric hordes from the northern wastes. His body returned in pieces, wrapped in the tattered banner of his house. The kingdom mourned, but Isolde, ever the pragmatist, knew that widowhood was a death sentence for a queen without a protector. Whispers in the court spoke of suitors circling like vultures, each one hungry for the crown and the lands it commanded. It was Lord Draven who emerged victorious in that grim contest of ambition. A warlord from the eastern marches, his face scarred from countless skirmishes, his hands stained with the blood of enemies and allies alike. He rode into Eldrith's capital with an army at his back, claiming Isolde's hand not through courtship but through conquest. The wedding was a spectacle of forced opulence, the great hall adorned with tapestries depicting ancient victories, while the air thickened with the scent of roasted meats and incense meant to ward off evil spirits. Alara stood at her mother's side during the ceremony, her gown of crimson silk clinging to her youthful form, oblivious to the way Draven's eyes lingered on her, not with paternal warmth, but with a predatory gleam that sent shivers through the assembled nobles. As the feast unfolded, goblets clinked and minstrels sang ballads of eternal love, but beneath the merriment lurked the undercurrents of dread. Isolde, her golden locks bound in a crown of thorns and roses, leaned toward Draven and murmured words of alliance, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. Draven responded with a laugh that boomed like thunder, his grip on her arm tight enough to bruise, as he declared to the hall that this night would seal not just their union, but the fate of the kingdom itself. Alara felt a chill as his gaze swept over her again, and she retreated to the edges of the crowd, where shadows offered fleeting sanctuary. The marriage bed awaited in the royal chambers, a massive oak frame draped in silks and furs, the very bed where Alara had been conceived years before, a symbol of legacy now twisted into something profane. As the guests dispersed, staggering from wine and revelry, Draven escorted Isolde to the room, his armored guards barring the doors behind them. Alara, dismissed to her own quarters, could not shake the unease that gnawed at her. She paced her chamber, the fire in the hearth casting flickering ghosts on the walls, until a soft knock echoed. It was her mother's handmaiden, Mira, her face pale as moonlight, whispering urgently that the queen summoned her daughter for a private blessing before the consummation. Alara followed Mira through the dimly lit corridors, the castle's stones cold beneath her bare feet, the air heavy with the scent of beeswax candles and something darker, like the metallic tang of blood. They arrived at the royal chambers, where the guards stepped aside without a word, their eyes averted as if in shame. Inside, the room was bathed in the glow of a roaring fire, the bed dominating the space like a sacrificial altar. Isolde sat upon it, her wedding gown partially unlaced, her expression a mask of resignation. Draven stood nearby, his tunic discarded, revealing a chest crisscrossed with scars, a goblet of wine in his hand. He smiled at Alara's entrance, a smile that did not reach his eyes, and gestured for her to approach. "Come closer, child," Isolde said, her voice trembling slightly. "We must perform the old rite, the consecration of the heir, to ensure the gods bless this union with strength and fertility." Alara hesitated, her instincts screaming warnings, but obedience had been drilled into her since birth. She stepped forward, the hem of her gown brushing the rushes on the floor. Draven's hand closed around her wrist, pulling her onto the bed with surprising gentleness at first, his breath hot against her ear as he explained in a low growl that in the ancient customs of his people, the mother's bed must witness the purity of the daughter before the new king could claim his queen, a ritual to bind the bloodlines and ward off curses. Alara's heart pounded as Isolde's hands, cold and unsteady, began to undo the laces of her daughter's gown. "This is necessary, my love," Isolde whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "For the kingdom's sake, we must endure." But as the fabric slipped away, exposing Alara's skin to the fire's warmth, Draven's demeanor shifted. His touch grew rough, his fingers digging into her flesh as he pushed her down onto the silken sheets still warm from her mother's body. Alara struggled, her cries muffled by Isolde's hand over her mouth. The queen's face a portrait of anguish as she held her daughter still, murmuring apologies that dissolved into sobs. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing the narrow windows like the lashes of a whip, drowning out Alara's pleas. Draven loomed over her, his weight pinning her to the bed, the scent of sweat and wine overwhelming as he invoked the names of dark gods from his homeland, gods of conquest and domination. "This consecration will make you mine as well," he rasped, "ensuring no rival can claim what is now bound to me." Isolde turned away, her body racked with silent convulsions, but she did not intervene, her fear of Draven's wrath and the fragility of her throne chaining her more surely than iron. The act was brutal, a violation that tore through Alara's innocence like a blade through parchment. Pain radiated through her body, sharp and unrelenting, as Draven moved with the ferocity of a warrior claiming spoils. Alara's mind retreated to fragments of memory, childhood games in sunlit gardens, her father's laughter before the wars claimed him. But each thrust dragged her back to the nightmare. Blood stained the sheets, mingling with the remnants of the wedding feast's spilled wine, a crimson testament to the desecration. Isolde, unable to bear it, fled to the corner of the room, her hands covering her ears, but the sounds echoed nonetheless, a symphony of grunts and whimpers that would haunt her dreams. When it was over, Draven rose, his satisfaction evident in the smug curl of his lips, and dressed without a word. He left the chamber, barking orders to the guards outside, leaving mother and daughter alone in the wreckage. Alara curled into herself, her body aching, her spirit fractured, as Isolde crawled back onto the bed, wrapping her arms around her child. "Forgive me," Isolde wept. "I had no choice. He threatened to raise the kingdom if I refused the right." But Alara, her eyes hollow, pushed her away, the betrayal burning hotter than the physical wounds. Days turned to weeks in the oppressive aftermath, the castle a prison of stone and silence. Draven consolidated his power, executing dissenters in the courtyard, their heads displayed on spikes as warnings. Alara withdrew into seclusion, her once vibrant spirit dimmed, haunted by nightmares where the bed became a living entity, swallowing her whole. Isolde, now queen consort in name only, navigated the treacherous court, her every move watched by Draven's spies. Whispers spread among the servants of the consecration, twisted into legends of ancient magic, but Alara knew the truth. It was no rite, but a calculated act of dominance, ensuring her silence and submission. Yet, in the depths of her despair, a spark of defiance ignited. Alara began to plot in secret, stealing moments in the library to pore over forbidden tomes of poisons and spells, her fingers tracing illustrations of daggers and dark rituals. She confided in Mira, the handmaiden, who smuggled messages to loyalists outside the castle walls. The kingdom simmered with unrest, peasants starving under Draven's heavy taxes, nobles chafing at his tyranny. Alara's violation became a catalyst, her pain fueling a rebellion that brewed like a storm on the horizon. One moonless night, as Draven feasted in the hall, oblivious to the gathering shadows, Alara slipped into the royal chambers once more. The bed loomed as before, but now she approached it with purpose, a vial of deadly nightshade concealed in her sleeve. Isolde found her there, her face etched with guilt, and for the first time, they spoke openly of the horror. "I will end him," Alara vowed, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands, "for what he took from us both." Isolde, torn between loyalty and redemption, nodded, her eyes fierce. Together we will reclaim our blood. The plan unfolded with the precision of an assassin's blade. Mira laced Draven's wine with the poison during the feast, her hands steady as she served him. He drank deeply, laughing at some crude jest, unaware of the venom coursing through his veins. Hours later, as the toxin took hold, he staggered to the marriage bed, collapsing onto the stained sheets, his body convulsing in agony. Elara and Isolde entered silently, watching as he gasped for breath, his eyes bulging in realization. "You! Witches," he croaked, reaching for them, but his strength failed. Elara leaned close, her lips brushing his ear. "This is the true consecration," she whispered, "a rite of vengeance for the innocent defiled." Isolde held the dagger, its blade glinting in the candlelight, and together they plunged it into his heart, the blood spurting like a final offering to the gods he had mocked. Draven's body went still. His reign ended in the very bed where his atrocities had begun. The kingdom awoke to chaos, but Elara emerged from the shadows, her gown soaked in blood, proclaiming herself the rightful heir. The nobles, weary of Draven's rule, rallied to her side, and the rebellion swept through the land like wildfire. Isolde stood beside her daughter, their bond reforged in shared suffering and triumph. Yet, as Elara ascended the throne, the scars remained, a reminder that in the dark medieval world of Eldrith, power was won not with purity, but with the willingness to embrace the abyss. Years passed, and Elara ruled with an iron fist tempered by wisdom, her court a bastion against the barbarism that had nearly destroyed her. Tales of the princess consecrated in her mother's bed spread across the realms, morphing into cautionary legends whispered around hearths. Some spoke of ghosts haunting the royal chambers, of Draven's spirit bound to the bed, eternally reliving his demise. Elara, now queen, would sometimes visit that room in the dead of night, tracing the faded stains on the sheets, a silent vow to protect her people from such horrors. But the world of ancient times was unforgiving, and new threats loomed on the borders. Invading armies, treacherous allies, plagues that ravaged the land. Elara faced them all, her experiences hardening her into a ruler both feared and revered. She married a lord of her choosing, a man of honor who knew her past and respected her strength, their union producing heirs who would carry the legacy forward. Isolde, in her twilight years, found peace in the gardens, tending flowers that bloomed defiantly amid the stones. In the end, the story of Elara became etched into the annals of Eldrith, a dark tapestry of betrayal, violation, and redemption. The marriage bed, once a symbol of desecration, was burned in a great pyre, its ashes scattered to the winds, freeing the spirits trapped within. And as the kingdom prospered under Elara's rule, the thunderous storms that had heralded her ordeal gave way to clearer skies, though the shadows of the past lingered, an eternal reminder that in the heart of every throne lies the potential for both glory and ruin. In the shadowed epochs that followed Queen Elara's ascension, the kingdom of Eldrith cloaked itself in an uneasy veil of prosperity, where the sunlit fields yielded bountiful harvests and the rivers ran clear with the promise of renewal. Yet beneath this facade lurked the ancient mysteries that had long slumbered in the earth's forgotten crevices, awakening now like serpents stirred from their coils by the echoes of past atrocities. The pyre's ashes, scattered to the four winds from the infamous marriage bed, carried with them not just the remnants of wood and silk, but fragments of curses unspoken, binding spells that Draven's dark invocations had unwittingly unleashed, threading through the air like invisible webs that ensnared the unwary and whispered secrets to those attuned to the arcane rhythms of the world. Elara, her throne a bastion hewn from the same unyielding stone as the castle walls, governed with a vigilance born of her scars, her decrees echoing through the halls like the tolling of ancient bells, commanding the reconstruction of temples long neglected and the fortification of borders against the encroaching mists that rolled in from the forbidden moors to the west. Her husband, Lord Garrick, a stoic figure forged in the forges of distant wars, stood as her consort, his loyalty a shield against the courtly intrigues that festered like hidden wounds. Yet even he sensed the subtle shifts in the ether, the way shadows lingered longer in the corners of chambers and the winds carried faint cries that mimicked the laments of the violated. Their children, twins named Lyrian and Thorn after ancestors lost to time, grew under the watchful eyes of guardians versed in both sword and sorcery. Their laughter a fragile melody amid the castle's brooding silence, unaware of the spectral threads weaving around their fates. As seasons cycled through their eternal dance, whispers began to infiltrate the kingdom's fringes. Tales from wandering merchants and hermits dwelling in the mist-shrouded forests, speaking of apparitions that manifested on moonless nights, ghostly figures cloaked in tattered wedding veils, their forms drifting through villages and leaving behind trails of frost-kissed earth where no winter chill should prevail. These specters, the stories claimed, sought out those who harbored secrets of betrayal, compelling them to confess in fevered dreams that blurred the line between slumber and waking horror. Alara dismissed such rumors at first as the fabrications of superstitious peasants, her mind anchored in the tangible realms of governance and diplomacy. But when reports reached her of a noble house in the southern fiefs crumbling under inexplicable plagues, crops withering overnight, wells turning to brackish poison, and heirs vanishing into the night, she dispatched emissaries to unravel the enigma, their cloaks embroidered with wards against the unseen. The emissaries returned not with answers, but with relics unearthed from ancient barrows beneath the afflicted lands. A shard of obsidian etched with runes that pulsed with an inner luminescence, and a faded parchment bearing illustrations of rituals akin to the one Draven had imposed, depicting circles of blood and invocations to entities older than the stars. Alara, poring over these artifacts in the seclusion of her private sanctum, felt a chill seep into her bones, a recognition that the consecration had not been mere brutality, but a gateway cracked open to realms beyond mortal ken, where forgotten deities hungered for the essence of royal bloodlines. The obsidian shard, when held to the light of a sacred flame kindled from the pyre's embers, revealed visions in its depths. Fleeting glimpses of Draven's ancestors performing similar rites in cyclopean temples swallowed by time, binding their conquests to pacts with shadow beings that demanded perpetual tribute in the form of innocence despoiled. Compelled by this revelation, Alara embarked on a clandestine journey, disguising herself as a humble pilgrim wrapped in coarse wool, her royal insignia concealed beneath layers of anonymity, venturing into the western moors where the mists concealed ruins of a civilization predating Eldritha's founding. The path wound through treacherous bogs that swallowed the careless, their surfaces deceptive mirrors reflecting distorted skies, and ancient oaks twisted into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach with gnarled fingers toward intruders. Accompanied only by a select cadre of loyal shadows, warriors trained in the arts of stealth and mysticism, they navigated by the guidance of stars veiled in haze, following the parchment's cryptic map that led to a sunken citadel, its spires breaching the fog like the bones of a drowned leviathan. Within the citadel's crumbling vaults, overgrown with luminous fungi that cast an ethereal glow on walls inscribed with eldritch symbols, Alara uncovered chambers sealed by wards of silver and salt, their doors groaning open at the touch of her blood-smeared palm, as if recognizing the lineage tainted by Draven's act. Inside, altars stained with millennia of offerings stood sentinel, surrounded by tomes bound in hides of creatures long extinct, their pages whispering incantations when the wind stirred. One such tome, its script flowing like liquid shadow, chronicled the rite of binding, a ceremony not of conquest but of summoning, where the violation of purity in a sacred bed served as a conduit for entities from the void to anchor themselves to the mortal plane, granting power to the summoner at the cost of eternal servitude. Draven, in his ignorance or arrogance, had invoked this rite imperfectly, fracturing the barrier and loosing unbound spirits that now roamed Eldrith, feeding on the kingdom's vitality and manifesting as the apparitions plaguing the land. As Alara delved deeper, the citadel stirred to life, its corridors shifting like a labyrinth alive with malice, illusions conjured from her memories assaulting her senses. Visions of the marriage bed reforming from mist, Draven's spectral form rising to reenact the horror, his ethereal hands grasping at her with icy insistence. She pressed on, her resolve aflame against the encroaching darkness, discovering a central sanctum where a pool of inky blackness rippled without source, reflecting not her face but the twisted visages of those who had suffered similar fates across ages, their eyes pleading for release. Dipping the obsidian shard into the pool, she triggered a surge of arcane energy that illuminated hidden murals depicting the downfall of ancient kings who had meddled with such forces, their empires reduced to dust by the very powers they sought to harness. The journey's perils escalated as guardians of the citadel. Ethereal wraiths born from failed rites emerged from the walls, their forms coalescing into armored phantoms wielding blades of solidified shadow, clashing against Alara's companions in a frenzy of silent combat, where steel met insubstantiality with sparks of otherworldly fire. Blood spilled on the moss-covered floors, awakening dormant vines that lashed out like serpents, entangling limbs and draining life essence to fuel the citadel's defenses. Alara, drawing upon the forbidden knowledge gleaned from the tomes, chanted counterincantations woven from her pain and vengeance, her voice resonating through the stone and dispelling the wraiths in bursts of dissipating mist, leaving behind echoes of agonized wails that faded into the depths. Emerging from the citadel with a coffer of artifacts, sealing crystals pulsing with captured essence and scrolls of exorcism rites, Alara returned to Eldrith under the cover of a tempest that masked her passage, the skies unleashing torrents that cleansed the land of lingering spectral traces. Yet the mysteries deepened, for upon her arrival, she found the castle besieged by omens. Mirrors cracking without touch, ravens amassing in unnatural flocks above the towers, and her children plagued by visions of a veiled woman who beckoned them toward hidden passages leading to forgotten crypts beneath the foundations. Isolde, now frail with the weight of years and guilt, confided in hushed tones that she had dreamed of the same figure, recognizing it as a manifestation of her own complicity, a spirit forged from the moment she held Alara down on that fateful bed, now seeking atonement or retribution. Undeterred, Alara convened a council of sages and seers in the dead of night, their deliberations illuminated by candles infused with herbs that warded against eavesdropping spirits, devising a grand ritual to seal the rift Draven had torn. The ceremony unfolded in the castle's great hall, transformed into a nexus of power with circles of salt and runes drawn in royal blood, the artifacts from the citadel placed at cardinal points to anchor the spell. As the moon reached its zenith, casting silvery beams through stained glass windows depicting Eldrith's storied past, Alara invoked the ancient words, her voice rising in a cadence that vibrated the very air, summoning the unbound entities into a vortex of swirling shadows that howled with the fury of imprisoned storms. The entities resisted, manifesting as tempests within the hall, uprooting tapestries and extinguishing flames, their forms shifting between grotesque amalgamations of Draven's scarred visage and the innocent faces of violated heirs from eras long gone. Alara's companions, armed with enchanted blades forged in the citadel's echoes, fended off tendrils of darkness that sought to ensnare her, their strikes severing connections to the void and eliciting shrieks that shattered goblets and cracked stone. In the ritual's climax, Alara plunged the obsidian shard into the vortex's heart, channeling her lineage's pain as a binding force, the entities recoiling as seals of light etched themselves into the ether, imprisoning them once more in realms beyond. With the rift mended, the kingdom exhaled a collective breath, the apparitions vanishing like dew under dawn's gaze, the plagues lifting from afflicted lands, and the omens dissipating into harmless portents. Alara, weary yet empowered, integrated the citadel's lore into Eldrith's archives, establishing orders of guardians trained in arcane vigilance to prevent future breaches, their oaths sworn on the shards of the marriage bed's remnants. Her rule extended into legends, the mysteries of the past woven into the fabric of her legacy, ensuring that the shadows, though ever present, bowed to the light of hard-won wisdom. Yet, as time's inexorable march continued, new enigmas arose from the horizons, whispers of distant empires unraveling similar rites, emissaries arriving with tales of alliances forged against emerging voids, and Alara's descendants inheriting visions that hinted at cycles unbroken. The ancient mysteries, like the roots of the world tree, delved deep and branched wide, promising that Eldrith's saga, born of desecration and redemption, would endure in the annals of eternity, a testament to the delicate balance between mortal ambition and the unfathomable depths that awaited those who dared to disturb them. In the waning years of Queen Alara's reign, as the kingdom of Eldrith basked in a fragile peace woven from her triumphs over the void, the ancient mysteries that once stirred in the shadows grew restless again, their whispers carried on winds that swept from uncharted seas beyond the horizon. The sealing of the rift in the great hall had bound the malevolent entities, but the obsidian shard, now enshrined in a vault beneath the castle, pulsed faintly in the stillness of night, as if sensing disturbances in realms unseen. Alara, her hair now streaked with silver, her eyes sharp with the weight of countless battles, felt the tremor of unease ripple through her dreams, visions of a veiled figure emerging anew, its form no longer bound to her mother's guilt, but entwined with a distant prophecy etched in the citadel's forgotten tomes. Word arrived from the farthest reaches of the realm, where the coastal cliffs crumbled into the churning waves, revealing caverns inscribed with glyphs that mirrored those of the sunken citadel. Fisherfolk spoke of lights dancing beneath the tides, luring ships to their doom, and of songs that drifted ashore, their melodies twisting the minds of listeners into madness. Alara, ever vigilant, dispatched her most trusted seer, a weathered mystic named Siren, to investigate, arming him with relics from the vault. A crystal imbued with the rift's fading light and a scroll of warding chants. Siren's journey led him through tempests that seemed conjured by wrathful spirits, his vessel battered by waves that roared with voices of the damned, until he reached the caverns, their walls alive with luminescent algae that pulsed in rhythm with the shard's distant beat. Within, Siren uncovered a shrine older than Eldrith itself, its altar adorned with pearls black as the void, arranged in patterns that mimicked constellations no living eye had seen. The air thrummed with an unseen presence, and as he traced the glyphs, they flared to life, revealing a warning. The rite of binding, though sealed, had left echoes across the world. Awakening sister shrines that hungered to complete the cycle Draven's folly had begun. These shrines, scattered across distant lands, were stirring, their energies converging to summon a greater entity, one whose name was lost to time but whose shadow loomed in the carvings. A colossus of starless night, poised to consume the mortal plane. Siren's report, delivered in haste as ravens fell dead from the skies, spurred Alara into action. She summoned her children, Lyrian and Thorn, now grown into warriors and scholars versed in the arcane, and entrusted them with a quest to seek out these shrines, armed with the knowledge of the citadel and the strength of their mother's bloodline. The twins departed under a blood-red moon, their cloaks embroidered with runes of protection, their hearts steeled by Alara's final words, spoken in the shadow of the throne. The abyss does not forget, and neither shall we. As they vanished into the mists, the shard's pulse quickened, and Alara, standing alone in the vault, felt the weight of eternity settle upon her, knowing that the mysteries she had faced were but the prelude to a greater reckoning, one that would test the legacy of Eldrith against the unending hunger of the void.